Hi everyone, I'm Harley D, and today we're going to be making bass like this.
Alright, I won't know.
And bass like this. So let's get straight into it then. Okay, so the bass we're going to be going over today is from a track of mine called Lighter that's just come out on my latest EP on Flexout, which is available on Beatport now if you want to go and check it out. But yeah, let's have a quick little listen and then we can have a look at how it all comes together, how it's made.
You put the lighters in the air, and if you don't have a lighter, put your hand in the air. Alright, I won't know.
So yeah, we're going to be going over that sort of like wobbly sort of talking bass. But yeah, let's just first have a look at the different layers. So I've got a sub layer here and a mid layer. So I'm splitting it up in this occasion. There's no bussing going on, but there's a bit of processing on the channels. So we'll have a look at that as we go through, and I'll show you the side chaining as well, because that's sort of like adding to the groove a little bit. But yeah, let's start off by having a look at this, listening to this mid patch on its own. So if I just turn all the processing off now so you can hear what it sounds like without that. So you can hear that processing is taking out the sub, sort of taming it, making it a bit more focused around the mids and giving it some sidechain, which is actually adding a little bit of groove as well. But we'll go through that once we've gone through the patch. We'll leave it all off for now though. So let's have a look at how this patch is being made. So you can see I've got all these effects on, which are essentially like adding a lot of distortion and saturation, spatial effects, so some stereo width, and sort of like balancing it or pushing sounds out with EQ. So we're going to leave that on for now, and we'll sort of go through it after we looked at how the all the oscillators modulation comes together. Otherwise, you wouldn't really hear what's actually happening as well. So yeah, we'll leave it on there for now and proper go through it after. So let's start off with just looking at Oscillator A. I've chosen a sine wave, turned the random phase off there, and dropped the octaves down by -2. And to give it a bit more like harmonic content, I've set warp mode A to the distortion diode 1 and just set that to 10%. So that's going to add a bit more sort of harmonic content in there from the get-go. And then I've set the warp mode 2 to phase distortion B. So this oscillator here will be phase distorting this oscillator. So I'll just give it a quick play now. So you can't hear the phase distortion because I haven't turned oscillator B on. But you are hearing the filter. So I'm just going to turn the filter off. So the reason it's moving is because I've got LFO 5 on the level. I've set it to like 3.5 hertz here, turned BPM mode off and set it to hertz mode. And yeah, just use this sort of shape here that I've created here and set that to the level. So it goes from 0 to 20%. And that's what's creating this little bit of movement. So if we turn oscillator B on now so you can hear the phase distortion, I've chosen the peaceful wavetable from the digital folder from the new ones in Serum 2. And I've set the wavetable position to 1. The phase is actually at 360 and the octaves is up +2. And the phase distortion on that is 67%. So have a little listen to that. And the reason it sounds like that is because the level is being modulated by the mod source over here. So oscillator B as a mod source. As you can see, it's actually moving around up there. So it's not actually giving it that sort of movement as you can see it, which is a bit confusing. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here. I'm using oscillator B to modulate the level as well as this LFO. So if I was to go over to the matrix here and show you it on the matrix, you'll be able to see oscillator B there is modulating the level. And I've set it to 100%. Obviously, you can see the polarity, the modes over here. Yeah, you can just copy those. And yeah, that's what I'm doing here to give it that that movement. So let's just have a quick little listen to that. So the actual movement is going to come more from the filter now. So if we turn the filter on, this wavetable oscillator A is going through to this filter, the low pass 12, just there. And obviously wavetable oscillator B is not going through to anything. The level's set to 0. So yeah, that's how all the oscillators are coming together. So the filter, the cutoff is set at like 96 hertz there. and it's going up by 46%, up to about 3.5k. Let's just have a quick little listen. Obviously, that's LFO5 going on to that one there as well. So LFO5 is going to be my main LFO that's going to move every sort of parameter I want in this patch. And I'll go through LFO6 in a bit. I think that's pretty much everything. The resonance is set to 58% there. The mix is full. I didn't use the drive. I was just experimenting with modulating that, but I didn't do that in the end. Same as the noise. I didn't put the noise oscillator on. I was also experimenting with that. But yeah, that's how that comes together. So we'll have a look at LFO6 right at the end, actually, because that's just sort of like extra movement and ways to get that extra movement. We'll have a look at that at the end. Let's go through all of the effects now and have a look at how that all comes together. So let's go to here. So let's turn these off. Some of these don't really do a lot, but we'll go through everything anyway, and I'll talk about the thought process behind it. Let's turn them off and have a little listen to how it sounds now like that. So that's what it sounds like without the effects on. So to start off with, just a little bit of saturation. I'm adding like soft saturation mode there. The drive's at 35, mix is at 100. So that's just to like sort of add a bit more harmonic content in there, saturate a little bit of stereo width after this. I'm using the hyperdimension mode, not the hyper mode actually, just a dimension. The mix is set to 20% and the dimension is set to 18%. LFO5 is modulating the size down by 8%, so it's going down minus 8% from that initial part. And that's to sort of like focus the stereo width. I don't want it to be constantly wide. It's just sort of like focusing it in a little bit, doing it this way. It's not constantly getting wider, and it gets narrower and wider with the movement as well, which is quite handy. Next up is an EQ. This doesn't really do a lot. You can copy them settings there. This is just you could probably take this off, turn this off now, and it wouldn't do too much. Just at the time, it was just the way I used it to get to what I wanted to hear. But it's taken out a little bit of the low end on a shelf and a bit of the high end on a shelf by like 4 dB and 2 dB. You can see the settings there. Next up is the delay. So this is just to add a bit more stereo width into the signal. I've got the mix set at 51%, and you can see I've like chosen this sort of shape here. So the Q's at like 0.8 and the frequency's at 2.5K. I've turned the link mode off and set left to 15 milliseconds, right to 20 milliseconds. And the feedback's at 38%. And I'm also using LFO5 to modulate that mix a little bit down by 5%. So it's going from 51% to 46%. And that's just sort of like, you can't hear it as much there, but if I was to add all the compression in after you and turn it off, you'd notice the stereo width gets a bit lower, a bit more folded in. After that, I've got a compressor in multi-band mode. Thresholds at minus 15.3, ratio at 3.1, the attack's at 60, release at 460, and the gain's at 11.3. And then the high's 1.2, low's 0.7, mix is full. That's in multi-band mode. That's just bringing the level up a little bit more and controlling them frequencies. Once again, another little EQ here, boosting the sub-region. You can copy them settings again. It's not doing too much, and it's just reducing the highs. It's just sort of like rebalancing the signal a little bit there. Not doing too much. Then I've got this little bit of reverb in here to add a bit more spatial element to the sound. The low cut's at 45, highs at 42. It's the vintage mode there, and the size is at 5%. Mix is at 10%, 11%. And yeah, you can copy these here. I think these are just standard. Yeah, they're all just standard, I think. Rates at 25, depths at 20 on the chorus. And then another EQ, which isn't doing anything, so you don't need to worry about that one. And then a compressor, which is in single band mode. The threshold's at minus 16.2, ratio at 4.1, attack 5.3, releases at 17.7, and gain at 5.8. Yeah, adding a little bit more gain into it and just compressing the signal a bit further. Then a little bit more distortion, soft clip. The drive's at 1%, it should be at. This really wasn't doing a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it on that. And then finally, another EQ. This pushes the sound out a bit more. So I've got the frequency set to like 850 hertz. The Q's at 57, and it starts at minus 2.1. So a little bit of a dip in that region. But then LFO5 modulates it up by like 42%. So up by 18 dB. So that's what really pushes the character of the sound out and makes it move with the wobble of the filter and the oscillator. And yeah, you could even change this frequency point here to get a different tonal characteristic to the sound. You know, this frequency here. As like that, basically. Oh, let's undo that. But yeah, that's a way I use to like push sounds out of the mix and get them moving with the sound modulation. And then finally, I've used a splitter, low and high splitter. Let's have a look at the crossovers. 210 hertz is the crossover. And then I'm using the downsample distortion. And that's what really adds that sort of like crispier top end into it, makes the sound much more full and present. The drive is at 21%, the mix is full. And that's pretty much how everything comes together with this sound. The only thing I've got here that's different that you haven't seen is LFO 6, and that is going to the LFO scaling on the global page. And I've just, if I show you the matrix quickly, LFO 6 here on the scaling is set to 48%, and that's the mode like that. And what that's doing is going to let me be able to change the LFO rate over time. As you can see, that it looks a bit mad because I was experimenting with like longer stretches of time, and then I just speeded it up. But if I was to do this, you see how it starts off fast and then gets slower. So yeah, let's put it to 1 bar, and if I was to bring that all the way down now like this. So you can see when it gets to this part now, it gets faster. And then I suppose at the top there, it's when it's slowest. So that's what the scaling does. It allows me to use another LFO to sort of like control the rate of the global LFOs. So the rate of every LFO, I believe. So yeah, that's what I'm doing in that instance there. And I've just obviously been experimenting with sort of like different movements and come up with this, and then just set it to 1.8, and it's just something I liked. So yeah, that's how the patch comes together. I'm pretty sure I've not missed anything here. The main set to -7.6. So the sub is just a sine wave with LFO with bin 2 on, 62% on bin 1, 13% on bin 2. That's pretty much it. The main's at like -4.2 there. There's no random phase on it. Levels -5. That's pretty much it. Just a sine wave with that extra little harmonic added in. That's all it is. Let's have a look at the processing now quickly. So I'll turn that sub off. Let's go over to here. So to start off with, I'm just cutting out the lows. You know, a little bit of a mad EQ here because I was kind of sculpting it in the mix a bit. But I'm taking out some of those low mids by like 3 dB, pushing up where the character of the sound is by 2 dB, high cutting it at 10K and reducing that sort of 7 to 10K region. That was a bit too harsh in my opinion, and it was kind of blurring the sound a bit, making it a bit too digital. So this here is just trying to sculpt it and make it a bit more focused. And then I got my sidechain for my kick. Yeah, I go over my sidechains and all my mixing processes in Patreon. If you want to check those videos, I won't go over them too much here. There's a snare sidechain there. Ozone 11. So this is a bit of multi-band compression. This is literally just, if we just play it there, it's compressing the low mids and the high mids. So 100 hertz to about 6K, it's compressing it a little bit by like 2 dB. That's all it's doing there. You could even use like an EQ and put it in dynamic mode and just get like 2 dB of like sort of like gain reduction on that. Other than that, another EQ, just taking a little bit of frequency out of 1K. This is obviously mix EQ at this point, just sort of like mixing it in, getting rid of the low end again in case there was any. Sort of like taming that 80 hertz region, taming 260 hertz, low cut in the sides at 250 hertz, and another bit of removal of 1.6K. So all of these are like sort of like trying to fit it in the mix, blend it with a sub, and get it to work with other elements in the track, the drums obviously. And finally a clipper, which is pushing the gain up by 10 dB. That's going to give me my level. And that's pretty much it. I'm using K-Clip for that. and then obviously lay it up with the sub, and that sub's obviously got the same sort of side chains on as the mid does. That's how we get that sort of sound. And then to get variations, as you can see over here, I've just duplicated up the patch here. And if I just go over to the sorry, if I have a look at this one over here, just like a different shape, different rate on there. It's 0.3 hertz. I haven't even got the LFO scaling on that, so it's just different rates essentially. You can get all these sort of different characteristics to the sound with different sort of like decays and expressions by changing that sort of rate. And that's pretty much it. And obviously you can change the that frequency point that I showed you earlier in the patch to get different sort of tonal characteristics to the sound as well. And yeah, then it's just a case of like creating new variations of it. But I'm pretty sure that's everything here that I wanted to go through and show you how this sound is made. What I'm going to do is leave the patch on Patreon, so you can actually just download that if you want. It's worth going over and trying to make it yourself so you can really understand these principles and learn from it. But yeah, if you want to support me, you can head over to my Patreon. I've got lots of production videos on there, loads of exclusive tracks, sample packs, and loads of presets as well for Serum. And yeah, also had a new release out recently called Deeper on Flexout with quite a few cool tracks on it, so you can go over to Beatport and check that out. But yeah, hopefully this has been helpful.